Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's OSS seminar. Um, the title of my talk, as you have already seen, it's Break the Invisible Wall, Challenges and Opportunities for People Who Stutter to Participate in In-Person and Virtual Conferences. And my name is Xiaomei Wu. And today I'm also experimenting with this format of using recorded presentations in a live talk because this is something I think can make the conference more inclusive and more accessible, especially for people who have speech diversity, such as stuttering. It's my first time doing it, so I want to see how it works and welcome your feedback too. So before I dive in, I want to give a little bit background about myself and why I'm passionate about this topic. So my name is Xiaomei Wu, and I'm the founder and CEO of Empower.org, a tech nonprofit that is committed to research and co-design empowering technology for and with marginalized communities. But before funding Empower, I was a research scientist at Facebook, currently called Meta, for 9 years, leading different tech for good initiatives, from accessibility to racial equity. While being a research scientist at Meta, and now I constantly published and attend different academia conferences and also chaired and organized a bunch of conferences in the past 10 years or so. So I have a lot of personal experiences, both attending and organizing conferences. And lastly, but not least, I'm a person who stutters. You may not be able to tell right now based on my speech, but you might hear a little bit more filler words and pauses when I talk. That's just how my stutter is right now at this moment, and I'm still exploring this part of my identity. Um, okay, so the overarching theme of this talk is conference accessibility. And on that note, I highly recommend this great resource compiled by Seek Access based on their experience organizing the conference assets, which I have been PCing for a long time. It's a great conference. Seek Access has published this accessible conference guideline, which you can find here. It covers a wide range of topics from how to select the venue or how to arrange the transportation. But there are two things that jump out when I was just reviewing last week. One is most of those considerations are applicable to more visible disabilities, such as vision loss, hard of deaf, and hard of hearing, as well as mobility issues. There is much less about more invisible disabilities, such as neurodiversity, as well as speech impediment. And second, there's almost nothing about virtual conference accessibility here because the guideline was published in August 2019 before COVID. So at least at that time, virtual conferences was not as popular. So I guess it was not really covered here. So that's why I think this talk, I want to focus on two things. One is how do we consider and include people with invisible disabilities in academia conferences and the entire academia environment. And second is how do we make virtual conference more accessible for all. So here is the agenda of today. So I will first give a little bit of background of what's stuttering and how does it relate to neurodiversity as a whole. And second, I'm gonna share a little bit of past research on the challenge people who stutter encounter in in-person conferences. And third, I'm gonna jump into virtual conferences and talk about our the research we are doing at Empower about the benefit as well as challenges for people who stutter in participating in virtual conferences. And lastly, I will share a little bit on our thinking in terms of the strategies for organizing and building more inclusive conferences for all. So let's dive in. What's stuttering? I want to leave a moment to ask you all to try to recall any person that you know, you work with, or you encounter that who stutter. What do they look like? How do they sound like? Have you met or heard anyone who stutter in academia conference? What kind of job do they do? I hope you all have personal experiences talking or working with someone who stutter, because stuttering is actually quite common. It's estimated to impact 1 to 3% of the world adult population. 6 to 8% of the children actually stutter when they were 4 to 5 years old, but 80% of them will recover automatically by the age of 7, and the remaining 20%, which contribute to this 1 to 3% number. Fortunately, adults who grow up with stuttering actually will have it lifelong. There's no effective cure for stuttering in adulthood, as the research has shown. And also, neural imaging from both children and adults shows that stuttering is actually a neuron developmental condition that impacted the part of your brain that controls speech motor functions. And lastly, stuttering is highly stigmatized. People whose stuttering has been historically and ongoingly discriminated against and are often socially devalued. There's a lot of research and data on that as well. So how does stuttering impact someone? Behavior-wise, there's a lot more visible signs, like the typical speech repetition, like beep, beep, beep behavior and prolongation, and blocks, like long pauses and silence in speech. But then there's also maybe less noticeable is the muscle tension people who stutter will experience during stuttering moment, as well as a lot of other secondary behaviors such as tics, facial grimace, and loss of eye contact during stuttering moment. But less visibly, a lot of cognitive and emotional load that comes with stuttering. For example, people who stutter because of a lot of the past negative experience with stuttering often feel anxiety, frustration, embarrassment, shame, and fear when they stutter or when they anticipate to stutter. And they also have a lot of negative thoughts and belief about themselves, such as they are less worthy, they cannot qualify, they cannot do certain jobs. And as a result, a lot of people who stutter developed various avoidance behavior to avoid certain sounds, certain words, certain situations, even certain kind of relationships. For example, intimate relationships, if people anticipate to stutter more or find out about they stutter. Lastly, but very importantly, people who stutter are also impacted socially and economically. They experience a lot more social rejections and are more likely to be stereotyped as less intelligent or less socially capable. And since childhood, they are more likely to be bullied and teased. And as a result, people who stutter on average have lower educational attainment, are underemployed, and earned 20 to 35% reduced income compared to people who do not stutter. So there is this severe social cost and social penalty come with stuttering. That's why we think this problem is important and we need to do something to better include people with speech diversity in the higher education as well as the scientific research. Okay, so this leads to our next topic, stuttering and academic conferences. Based on my own experience going to different academic conferences, I have never heard any other person or any other presenter who stutter, or met or talked to another attendant who stutter. This is this personal experience doesn't really match with the 10 to 3% population um, whose the occurrence rate of stuttering among adult populations. Why is that? The Nature actually had an article last year that their reporter interviews 3 researchers who stutter about their experience and challenges in in-person conferences. And 2 things really stand out. First, the time pressure. We are all very familiar with how everything is strictly timed in conferences, from presentation to Q&A, and even to social times. We have limited time to have our coffee break or, and lunch break. And more conference also introduce very short, activity with very short timings, such as madness sessions, which are 30-second preview of the full presentation, or things like lightning talks, like 1 to 2 minutes of of the of 1 to 2 minutes presentation of the entire research. While they can maybe make the conference more efficient, they really penalize people who stutter, because our speech production not it's not the same way just as other people. It's much less predictable of the rate of speech that we can produce. So making talking under strict or short time pressure extremely challenging for people who stutter like me. And another factor is the noisy environment a lot of those in-person conferences are. Especially as conference getting bigger and bigger, we often have to talk in very big and crowded halls that require people to really master their to kind of shouting across the room to make themselves heard, which added difficulty in speech motor control. And another thing I want to point out is actually in this article where they interviewed 3 researchers, but one of them asked to be kept anonymized, which to me just shows that how stuttering is still stigmatized in the research and in the research and in the academic field, like how it the potential implication it can have to the career and the kind of opportunity that you have as a scientist. It's very significant. Okay, so what can we do to make in-person conference more stuttering friendly? First, I recommend we design more flexibility with presentation style and timing For example, like what I'm doing here, allowing presenters to record presentations beforehand in the settings where they feel more comfortable and more control in terms of the timing and the kind of social pressure that they will experience. And then just schedule enough time for all the activities such as Q&A and the kind of buffer time in between sessions, just to really reduce the time pressure people feel when they are speaking. Second suggestion is to provide more ways for conference participants to interact. For example, like set up really good poster sessions where people can talk without the time limit they have as in conference presentations. And also provide channels for participants to have synchronized Q&A and follow-up discussions. And lastly, maybe provide designated quieter space so that people can talk more easily, which can also, which can be benefit not only for people who stutter, but also people with autism or other sensory needs. Okay, so now move on to virtual conferences. I'm going to present some research we have conducted at Empower with 13 participants who stutter on their video conferencing experience and challenges. Even though the research was not focused on virtual conferences, but I think a lot of the lessons and insights we gained can be applicable here. So first of all, let's talk about benefits. I firmly believe that the virtual conferencing and video calling platform are equalizer, where they allowed more people to participate in the conversation and in the field. So not surprisingly, there are several benefits that our interviewees, people who stutter also call out when using video conferencing tools. So first, it's they really reduce the barrier to show up, not only making it easier to call into the meeting from your home, but really allow you to customize your environment into the way that make you feel more in control and more comfortable when you talk. For example, now in front of my desk, I have this stress ball that I can just squeeze in when I'm feeling stressed out and like a lot of pressure. So I think those kind of things is just hard to do when you go to a conference venue. And then not only you can customize your physical environment, you can also customize the virtual environment where you see how the audience show up. For example, like there are ways that those platforms allow you to customize the layout of audience, so that will give people just a more kind of psychological control and kind of comfort, especially when speaking in high stress situations. And the second benefit is to make it easier for people to mask their identity and mask both their stutter and their identity as someone who stutters. For example, people can rehearse their speech beforehand with both video and audio off, and then only turn on only unmute themselves when they are confident that they will be fluent. And then people can also turn off cameras so then other people cannot see their facial tension during stuttering moments. And lastly, a lot of people have been using, not a lot of people, but a few people we talked to have been using fluency-inducing technologies such as the DAF devices, which can kind of make you speak fluently temporarily during high stress moments such as public speaking and interviews. Lastly, people can also position their camera to hide secondary stuttering behavior. For example, now because you cannot see, because you can only see my chest above, you will not see the other strategies I'm using. For example, tapping my feet when I'm having a stuttering challenge. But lastly, virtual conference also help to increase public empathy for speaking challenges and also speaking disruptions. For example, people noting there's a cultural shift to be more okay when someone just suddenly drop out from the call, or when there's like a toddler walking in. So people seem to just have more patience for other people to speak and to finish their thoughts. And there's also more awareness and norm be kind of developed to support everyone in the virtual meeting to have the chance to speak, such as using the hand raising button or checking in with everyone before finishing the call. Okay, so after talking about those benefits, how about challenges? At the same time, the people we interview also share a lot of unique or extended challenges as people who stutter to participate in video conferences. Uh, First and most, um, almost everyone complain about the self-view function, which is very unintuitive if you are trying to design the conferencing experience to mimic the kind of real life in-person conversation. Because when you are talking with someone in real life or when you are in a meeting, you don't normally see yourself, but somehow video conferencing platform, a lot of them actually does not allow you to turn off. Some of them actually does not even allow you to turn off self views, which really confronted people who stutter with one of their biggest nightmare, like seeing yourself stuttering. If like if you have a lot of anxiety and fear of certain things, and really seeing and being exposing to it doesn't help. So that bring a lot of additional stress and distraction to our interviewees when they speak, just having this self view there. And second, it's actually challenging for people who stutter to get and keep their terms, especially when a lot of video conferencing platform kind of assume that um, that you want to have a turn when you talk. So the audio channel or the voice, it's used by a lot of platform to kind of determine the turn order, or like who is the current speaker. For example, in the speaker view will be automatically switched to somebody who make the sound. However, for people who stutter, it's very hard for us to start a sentence, especially the initial sound are the hardest. So it's hard for me to compete with somebody for my turn if I have to use my voice. Versus when we are in person, I could use other things like waving my hand or my whole body leaning forward to kind of indicate my desire to speak. And then even when we get even after I get my turn, sometimes it's hard for me to keep it, because especially if I have a long uh, pause when I'm completely blocked from making the sound. And then sometimes people will confuse that as if I lost my internet connection, because those moments my face does appear as frozen, like my in time, and because I'm just blocked, that's just how stuttering is. So often, a lot of time, other people were just cutting in, assuming I'm done or I have lost the internet, I cannot continue speaking. So keeping the terms during those stuttering moments is also challenging. And lastly, and like kind of in the bigger picture, like video conferencing platform really limited how much non-verbal communication you can do. It's for people who stutter. A lot of us have learned a lot of strategies to leverage our non-verbal channels to better communicate and engage with our audience. You may notice how much I'm using my hand now, and then that is not only for me to like share my message. That's also an important way for me to uh to to seek the emotional support that it's crucial to support me from a lot of struggling moment when I'm stuttering. Like for example, some of our interviewees mentioned they will sit next to their friend in meetings where they feel the more high stress settings, or if when they are presenting at a conference doing a public speaking, they will lock eyes with someone in the audience with the most friendly and supportive facial expression. So those are the strategies I think many people use, but they are just really crucial for someone who struggle with their speech and have a kind of negative association with speaking to getting through those moments of struggle. And now with video conferencing, those are really hard to do. You cannot sit next to someone you like, and it's very hard for you to locate the most, to get both the facial expression or locate the person that you wanna kind of keep looking at when you are presenting. A lot of times when I'm in the presenter mode, I cannot even see any of the audience. So that it's yeah. So that it's hard. So so all of this make I think a lot of those challenges I think can be shared by everyone. They're not unique to people who stutter, but stuttering does make those challenges doubly exhausting and emotionally draining for people who stutter. So as a result, people have to spend actual time, labor, and mental effort to participate. And then that can be a structural barrier too, right? Like if it's such a hard thing for me to do, I may be more selective at how many meetings I can attend, or like more and how many conferences I will go to. So in the long term, I can really create another structural barrier for people who stutter to enter. Okay, so knowing all this, what should virtual conferences do? Besides what we talked about before in terms of having more flexibility in terms of timing and provide more ways for the participant to interact, which I think still apply for the virtual conferences, there are some unique things I think virtual conferences should consider. First is to allow people this option to turn off self-view when you are choosing platform to host virtual conferences. Avoid the ones that do not allow people to turn self-view off. For example, Messenger Room, designed by Meta, does not have that option. A lot of people who started deliberately avoid using it, and also give me more people more choices on the speaker view. Like do not pin it, allow people to turn it off. Second, really structure the turn taking. Don't make it a wild field. Everyone have to fight just by who's the loudest. Build a norm to use different function that to use buttons, chat, or like different ways to indicate the turn order. And also again encourage the audience to ask questions synchronously. and also confirm with someone who's talking that they are done before moving on to the next speaker. And third, provide additional channels for speaker to connect with the audience. For example, if I cannot finish my talk within the time limit, I'd like to post the slides or share other materials on some other channels outside this allocated presentation time. How do we support that? And how do we share the kind of positive feedback from the audience to the speaker in real time at the moment while they are probably struggling with their presentation? How do we have this kind of positive emotional flow back and forth? And then also allow the speaker to really ping and select somebody they want to see from the audience, and show this supportive face during their presentations. I think it's another good idea too. So that's all I have in terms of my presentation, and thank you for your time, and I'd like to really hear more from you guys. So I list a few topic of discussion, and I'd like to learn from you all and work with you all to come up with maybe a new updated guideline for accessible conference for all. Thank you.